Pedagogy of the Oppressed. It was written by an educator from Brazil. And basically what he's telling people is that the teacher and the student are one and the same. In other words, it's not so much of a one-sided thing. Which is why eventually I'm going to start asking everybody who is present to start dialoguing. Because that's another way to learn. Because both are the Seba. In the Kemetic language, Seba means what? Seba means teacher. But it also means student. And it also means star. So every one of us up in here are stars. It could be where Aleister Crowley got that in his words. Every man is a star. So we all are here to learn, and we all are here to teach. But there's different forms of education. The word education, to educate. Again, to bring that which is within to the outside. But a lot of people who study, right, they may not go far enough in their studies. A lot of people go to Wikipedia and call that study. It's a good place for, maybe a few references. But there's also the whole thing of having observation and experience, direct experience. It's important for education. Which is why I don't recommend somebody find some type of meme about aliens living in the moon and then sharing that meme because they have no evidence that there's any truth to that. They just picked up a meme on Facebook and decided to share it with everyone. Then they go home and try to talk to their mom, dad, and grandma about it and get kicked out the dining room because they sound crazy. The reason why is because you have to also develop critical thought if it's going to be educating. Now, when it comes to spirituality and science and spirituality, from an academic point of view, the two don't mix from an academic point of view. But there are philosophical approaches where they do. So the thing about it, when you are dealing with, which is that the masses or the people, which we all are, one big mass of people, we are constantly connecting ideas and concepts, and we are trying to make sense of things with the utilization of words. So it's important that we learn how to utilize the proper words. And according to ancient wisdom teachings of Kemet, the Neteru brought creation into being with words. So there is a word or two words for the script of hieroglyphics in ancient Kemet called the Medu Neter or Medu Neter or Ntu Nter or Medu Necher, depending on the dialect. And believe it or not, Necher is older than Neter. They're both Kemetic words. They're both legitimately Kemetic. But you'll discover in the older kingdom, older period, you have more of a ch sound. So you had Necheru instead of Tehudi, it was Jehudi. Both are correct. Okay. So, looking at this whole thing about the word, according to the ancients, everything around you is the word of the divine. Each and every one of us are also manifestations of that word. So one of the things that the Creator would say is I am. and that's Anuk. And notice how it hides the word Unk. I am. You are what? A living being. However, in this particular system in which we grow up in, you're not treated as a living sovereign being. You're treated as an object or a thing. And in order for us to be authentic, we have to be in alignment with who we are, because our purpose here is to become an authentic being, right? A lot of people don't want to deal with the human experience, but guess what? You're here to learn to be human, whether you like it or not. You have to go to the very human experience of raising your children, taking care of your elders. No matter what you think you are, you're going to go through this human experience as long as you're here in this form. You have to eat, you have to sleep. You got to go through the usual mating rituals it takes to bring another human being into the game. To have children. So there are things that you're going to do here in this physical form that's unavoidable. So the ancients talked about stages of development. Before you could be considered immortal, you got to have some type of mastery over the Hu-Man, Hu-Aman, Hu-Amun experience. Hu is authoritative utterance. Hu is also the soil. Man is the mind. In other words, you got a mind within the matter. You have mind operating through the material plane. And when you are focused, you can manifest the things that you want to manifest. However, there's the masculine principle of such focus. And there's also the feminine principle that comes with feeling, which is important also in having something to manifest. Focus and the feeling behind it. Not so much always worrying about exactly how it's going to be done, but also the intent in focusing on to get there. See it. Meditate on it. And then let your spirit direct you along the way. Because when it comes to this type of practice, you'll discover that the intellect can sometimes work against you. So when you get involved in certain techniques like yoga, martial arts, or qigong, eventually the spirit begins to take over and you're not moving with this intellect, because this is not just here, it's throughout your being. The mind is not just in the head, it's actually in your whole being. You hurt your finger, your whole body hurts. You feel it, even though the starting and the focal point may be in your finger. You hurt. It's not just your finger that's hurting, you're hurting. So it goes to us all being connected and interconnected. Because we're fractals, that is microcosms of a macrocosm. And guess what? When you're in a family, if you're hurt, it often affects other members of the family. If large segments within the community is hurting, then that means the community is hurting. You see. If you have people within your community or common unity, let's say that they're on the up and up, you don't hate on them. You're glad to see them succeed. Why? Because that person can also assist you so you can succeed. That's the attitude of a healthy society. So we're looking at how the Neteru functioned and how they were able to design a healthy society. The Neteru functioning through humans. According to the Permanent Gare, the Egyptian Book of the Dead, Anui says, Nukbatinter, meaning my soul is divine. He also said, Sunuizanu, or Metu Besanu, Unizanu, meaning the children of impudent revolt must never rise. What is these children of impudent revolt? These children of impudent revolt are these thought forms, these thoughts that hinder us from moving forward when it comes to our inner being. The children of impudent revolt are those negative thoughts that you have that says, I cannot, I can't, so therefore I will not. So we're dealing with the Netaru. We're looking at how the Netaru must function through a human being. So we're looking at the Perdim Haru. It says that my soul is divine. Earlier we talked about the tree of life, right, by Shechem or Shechem. And then you look at the top of the tree, you got Osar, or Usir, and then you got Tahudi, and you got Sikr. This upper trinity is important because Asar represents what we all want to become. Now, if you look deeper into Asarian tradition, it talks about how he dies and resurrects. And that's important because tonight we're doing this solstice celebration, right? I'm not necessarily us, but I'm talking about around the country, people are practicing this solstice celebration called Christmas, which is when the sun is to disappear the 21st or 22nd day, and then it's seen again on the 25th day. That's the third day. The sun going to the underworld being resurrected, or the sun not being seen and resurrected. Hence, it goes along with the solar mythos. There's an aspect of Osir that was identified with not just the sun, but earlier periods with the moon, which is why sometimes he is torn into 16 fragments, and other times he is torn into 14 fragments, representing either 16 or 14 stages of the moon, which is also connected to the ancient harvest seasons. You're also going to notice that Tahuti in these times was also identified with the moon. So you see how they dealt with a lunar calendar, and a solar calendar, and a stellar calendar. So they dealt with a triple calendar. So you're dealing with this Kemetic wisdom, and everybody wants to look at the symbols, but are they paying attention to how they connect? You see, you have to pay attention to how their worldview may have been, because we're used to living over here in the West. This is why I encourage people to study and get involved in living traditions so you can understand what ancient Kemet was talking about. Because a lot of people are speculating, but they're not going by any tradition. You see everything that we're doing when we feed the ancestors or when we feed the deities. Just about everything we're doing now is what they did back then. Okay? I know people want to consider Akhenaten an extraterrestrial from Sirius and all that, even though none of the Kemetic literature says that. A whole bunch of New Agey stuff says it. See, that's what I'm talking about, critical thinking. New Agey stuff is written by people who are not really disciplined in academics. Now, some of it is channeled information. Okay, we'll talk about that too. Channeled information is more dealing with a left brain approach, because you're connecting with the higher self, the indwelling intelligence, also connecting with cosmic intelligences. And that can be looked upon in many ways. Now, some of these beings that people see, right, that they consider to be even extraterrestrial, does not necessarily have to be physical, at least not on the density in which we are. For people often see beings from other dimensions when they have activated a certain aspect of their consciousness. Of course, this universe is teeming with life. But when you look into it, it says in the Kabbalah, the first, who can tell me what it says? Mentalism. Don't worry. I want you guys to remember this. Mentalism. The all is mind. The universe is mental. That's the first of 7 recognized Hermetic principles. And you will find them in a book called the Kabbalion by the 3 initiates. Get that book sometimes and memorize those 7 Hermetic principles. Mentalism, correspondence, vibration, polarity, rhythm, cause and effect, and gender. I'll even slow it down. Mentalism, correspondence, vibration, polarity, rhythm, cause and effect, and gender. I will give you an assignment. I want you to look up each of these 7 and have a definition for those 7. And when we have our next session, you'll be able to tell me what they are and why they're so important. Why it's important to understand, as above, so below, as within, so without. Or the concept of gender and how it applies to all planes.
You say all 7 or 8 of them. Say them.
Yeah.
Mentalism, correspondence, vibration, polarity, rhythm, gender.
Mentalism, correspondence, vibration, polarity, rhythm, cause and effect, and gender. There should be 7. Alright? So these are universal principles, and you'll find them practiced not only in Western magic, but you'll also find them practiced throughout your African traditions that are living, and many of your indigenous traditions that are alive today. You find these practices being applied. Now, number 7 is very sacred throughout indigenous cultures because it's dealing with the 6 directions and an inner direction where people forget to look. They look at north, south, east, and west, and they look at up and down, but they forget to look inward so they can bring out the best within themselves to the surface. So when you're tapped in, right, you tap in good enough to the point that you really tap in. If you want those who oppose you to tap out. You see? But who are those that oppose you? And I'm going to tell you something. You got the power to recreate that. The problem is that we let the enemy occupy too much space in our head. And that's what they want you to do. So, you got to give attention to that which you want to see. More than that which you don't want to see. The things that you want to see happen. Focus on these things happening. See them happening with your mind's eye. The Yoruba call this part, especially in the Lukumi practice, Ileda, meaning creator. Right here. This part, Alojone, third eye, first eye, right on your ori, your head. Because things are created with the imagination. When you're operating with a healthy imagination, then that is when you are dealing with creativity, het haru. But it's good for you to develop the discipline and the